Hey, it's Ava. Imagine this. You're celebrating your promotion. Everything's going perfectly. And then, your mother-in-law asks you to pay for your sister-in-law's college tuition, right in front of everyone. Sounds outrageous, right? But it doesn't stop there. Things take a turn when my father-in-law exposes shocking family secrets that leave me questioning everything. What happens when the people closest to you manipulate, betray, and try to control your life? Keep watching to find out, because the truth is far darker than I ever imagined. I had been dreaming of this moment for months, my promotion. It was the culmination of years of hard work, late nights, and sacrificing time with my loved ones. The announcement had come, and with it, a sense of pride that buzzed through my veins like electricity. The party we'd planned to celebrate my success had been perfect. Laughter, music, delicious food, and my family around me. For a brief moment, I could almost forget the pressures of the job that loomed in the back of my mind. I stood in the kitchen, adjusting the hem of my dress, feeling the warm glow of happiness surround me. Ethan, my husband, was by my side, his hand on my back, offering me the silent support he always did when I needed it most. I looked around at the familiar faces, my parents, close friends, and of course, my in-laws. And then she walked in. Charlotte, my mother-in-law. Always impeccably dressed, always composed, but never without her sharp, calculating eyes that seemed to assess everything and everyone in the room. I tried to ignore the tension that built up in my chest every time she entered a room, but tonight I felt it again, more than usual. She made her way toward me with that thin smile that could either be friendly or a warning. She leaned in, pressing her cheek to mine in a gesture that was as cold as the polite words that followed. "Congratulations, Ava," she said, her voice warm but hollow. "You've done well for yourself." I smiled back, forcing the tightness in my jaw to loosen. "Thanks, Charlotte. It means a lot to me." And then, without any prelude, she dropped the bomb. "You know," Charlotte began, her voice dropping slightly, "I was thinking about something. My niece Sophie is applying for college. It's been tough for her, and well, I think it's time for you to help out." I froze. My brain short-circuited as I processed what she'd just said. "Help out? How?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, though the confusion was quickly turning into something sharper. "Well," she continued, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, "Sophie needs financial assistance. Her tuition fees are piling up, and frankly, I thought that, considering your new promotion, you'd be the perfect one to step in." I blinked, still unsure if she was joking. I started, my voice shaking, but before I could respond, she pressed on, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if daring me to say no. "Ava, it's not just about money. It's about family," she said, her tone softening in that unmistakable way that was meant to guilt-trip me. "You've worked so hard to get where you are, and it only seems right that you help your family out now." My heart pounded in my chest. I was confused, angered, and frankly stunned. How could she ask something like that, so casually at my celebration? I had just achieved something monumental in my career, and here she was, trying to strip away the joy of the moment with this ridiculous request. "No," I said, the word slipping out before I could stop it. "I can't do that, Charlotte. I'm sorry." She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, I understand, Ava. You're probably busy with work, I get that. But you're in a position now, and Sophie's family could really use your help. It would mean a lot to her." I stood there stunned, my thoughts a whirlwind. This wasn't about money. It was about control. Charlotte was playing me, trying to make me feel like the villain for not helping her niece. But I couldn't allow myself to fall into that trap. I couldn't. Not when the request was so unfair, so out of place. I felt my throat tighten, my chest swell with frustration. I couldn't let this ruin my night. But Charlotte wasn't done. "Honestly," she said, now louder, her voice carrying across the room to where my father-in-law stood with a drink in hand, "it's really disappointing that you wouldn't want to help out family. I thought you would understand the importance of supporting each other." My face flushed with embarrassment. I glanced at Ethan, hoping for some sign that he would intervene, that he would step up and stand by me. But he stood there, silent, his eyes fixed on the ground. The room seemed to close in on me, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. My own family, my friends, and all the people who had come to celebrate my success, they were watching. They were all witnessing this uncomfortable, unexpected scene, and there was nothing I could do to make it stop. Charlotte had made her move, and the tension between us now hung in the air like an electric charge, crackling and ready to explode. I could feel my pulse in my ears, the anger surging through me, but I held it in. I couldn't let her win. Not now, not ever. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that," I said again, my voice steady, though my hands were clenched into fists at my sides. Her smile faltered for just a moment, but it was enough. I had stood my ground. I turned away, my back to her, but the damage was already done. The words that had been spoken would linger, and I knew it. I could feel the heat of her gaze burning into my back, but I didn't look. Not this time. The night dragged on, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the party had been irreparably tainted. I felt distant, disconnected from everything around me. Every laugh, every toast, every cheerful greeting. It all felt hollow now. And in the back of my mind, a new question gnawed at me. Would Ethan ever take my side, or would he stand by his mother? As the night wore on, I couldn't help but feel like this was only the beginning of something much bigger, something that would change everything. The next few days after the party passed in a haze. The jubilation I had felt was overshadowed by the haunting memory of my mother-in-law's demand. I kept replaying her words over and over, as if they were a threat I couldn't escape. Every time I looked at Ethan, I found myself wondering if he would ever acknowledge what had happened, or if he was as complicit as his mother. Tonight, we had planned to have a quiet family dinner. Ethan seemed eager for a chance to reset the tension in the house. We hadn't discussed the incident yet, but it hung between us like an unspoken cloud. I needed answers. I needed to understand why my family, my in-laws especially, had decided to force me into this corner. We sat at the dinner table, the conversation light at first, but there was an undercurrent of unease. The subtle clink of silverware against plates, the quiet hum of distant conversation, did little to mask the tension I felt in the air. As we dug into our meal, George, my father-in-law, dropped the first bombshell. He'd been quiet for most of the evening, but now his voice was low, almost measured. "Ava," he began, looking at me with a tired gaze, "I need to tell you something. It's about Charlotte's request. I think it's time you understood the bigger picture." I froze mid-bite, the fork still held between my fingers. George's tone wasn't harsh, but it carried a weight that immediately alerted me to the gravity of what he was about to say. "You see," he continued, his eyes glancing towards Charlotte, who was quietly sipping her wine at the other end of the table. "The family's finances have been stretched thin for a while now. Charlotte, she's been doing her best to keep it together, but it's not easy." I blinked, unsure how to process the sudden turn of the conversation. "What do you mean?" I asked cautiously, my mind already racing. Was this about the tuition fees? Was there more to this than Charlotte had let on? He sighed deeply, a sound laced with frustration. "The college fund for Sophie, it's gone, depleted. And that's why Charlotte's been asking for help. She's desperate. She didn't know who else to turn to. It's not just about the tuition. It's about everything." I felt the floor beneath me shift. My stomach tightened in a knot. So, Charlotte wasn't just manipulating me for the sake of it. There was a deeper need, a financial crisis that I had never been privy to. I had been so wrapped up in my own success that I never thought to ask the hard questions about my in-laws. I'd been so busy trying to please everyone that I hadn't even noticed how precarious their situation had become. George's voice lowered further as he added, "I didn't want to say anything before, but we've been living beyond our means. The house, the lifestyle, it's all been propped up by borrowed money. Charlotte, she's been trying to make ends meet, but it's been harder than you think." A wave of shock hit me, followed by anger. I looked over at Charlotte, who was pretending to be absorbed in her wine glass. She knew. She had known all along, and she had still asked me, in front of everyone, to help. She had manipulated me into thinking that it was just about family, that it was just about Sophie. But it was all about money. It always had been. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. And you're telling me this now? My voice was trembling slightly, but I fought to keep it steady. You expect me to just step in and save the day? You knew about all of this, and yet you still let Charlotte pressure me like that? George looked away for a moment, his eyes darting around the table as though searching for the right words. I'm sorry, Ava. I should have told you sooner. But, in all honesty, I didn't think it would come to this. I thought we could handle it ourselves. I was reeling. I felt a rush of betrayal, but beneath it was something even deeper. A cold realization that my place in this family was built on false pretenses. I was nothing but a financial lifeline, a pawn in their game of survival. You could have come to me before you put me in that position, I said, my voice sharp now. I might have helped, but you didn't give me the choice. You just made me feel like I had to. George's eyes widened as if he hadn't expected me to react this way. But it wasn't just the money that hurt. It was the fact that they had been so willing to manipulate me, to use my success as an excuse for their own failures. Before I could say more, Charlotte spoke up, her voice calm but insistent. Ava, I didn't want to put you in an uncomfortable position, but we are family, and now that you've done so well for yourself, it only makes sense that you would help. We're all in this together. I could feel my hands tightening around my fork again. This wasn't about family. It was about guilt. It was about using me as a tool to get what they wanted. I had known for a while that Charlotte wasn't as sweet as she appeared, but now I saw her for who she truly was, a woman willing to manipulate anyone, even her daughter-in-law, to get what she needed. You've made your point, I said coldly, standing up from the table. But I won't be manipulated. Not like this. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, the anger and frustration mounting. But beneath it all, there was something more. A growing sense of betrayal. I thought this was my family, but now I wasn't sure what that even meant anymore. As I excused myself, I could feel the weight of their eyes on me, but I didn't care. My mind was racing, but it was clear now. This wasn't just about a college fund. This was about something much deeper. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, George's next words hit me like a slap. Ava, he said, his voice more insistent now. You need to help us. Charlotte can't do it alone. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. George, the man who had once supported me, was now doing the same thing Charlotte had done, turning the pressure on me. I stared at him, the confusion in my eyes now replaced by anger. No, George, I said, my voice hardening. I won't be your solution. The silence in the house after dinner was suffocating. I sat on the couch, staring at the glowing screen of my phone, but not really seeing anything. The words my father-in-law had shared with me kept running through my mind in endless loops. The family's financial struggles, the depleted college fund, Charlotte's manipulative behavior, it all felt like one giant mess I had unknowingly stepped into. I glanced at Ethan. He sat beside me, his body rigid, his face etched with uncertainty. I knew he was just as affected by the turmoil in his family, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the sidelines, watching me fight alone. Why didn't you say anything, Ethan? I asked, breaking the silence. My voice was calm, too calm. The anger was simmering beneath, ready to boil over. Ethan flinched, looking at me with a mix of confusion and guilt. I didn't know how to handle it, Ava. I didn't think it would get to this point. I felt my chest tighten. You didn't think? You didn't think this was going to affect me? I could feel my voice rising. Your family is using me, Ethan, and you're letting it happen. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, running a hand through his hair. I'm not letting it happen. I'm just stuck between two people I love. I can't just turn my back on my mom. I leaned forward, my eyes narrowing. And what about me, Ethan? You've turned your back on me. You've let me handle all of this on my own. You haven't stood up to your mother. You haven't stood up for me. He looked at me, his expression torn. You don't understand. She's my mother, Ava. She's been there for me my whole life. And now she's asking for help. What am I supposed to do? Just cut her off? I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breath. What about me, Ethan? What about the wife you promised to support? The woman you vowed to stand by? You can't keep playing both sides. I need you to pick a side." His eyes flickered with emotion, but it wasn't enough to soothe the growing fire inside me. I wanted him to make a decision, my decision, and yet he kept vacillating. Each time he stayed neutral, I felt more abandoned, more isolated. "I'm trying, Ava," he said softly, his voice tinged with frustration. "I don't know what else to do. I don't want to lose you, but I don't want to lose her either." I leaned back against the couch, my arms folded across my chest. "That's the problem, isn't it? You don't want to lose either of us, but you're losing me, Ethan. Every day, you're losing me." There was a long silence between us. My words hung in the air like a heavy weight, and I could see him struggling with them. The man I had married was caught between two worlds, and neither of them seemed to care about me. I stood up abruptly, pacing across the room. "You can't keep avoiding this, Ethan. You can't just let your family's issues become mine. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't ask for it. But here we are." He stood up too, taking a step toward me, but I backed away. "Ava, please, I don't want to fight. I just don't know what to do." I shook my head, the frustration building inside me until it felt like it was suffocating me. "You know what you can do, Ethan? You can start by standing up for me. You can stop letting your family walk all over us. You can stop pretending that everything is fine when it's not." He took another step forward, his voice softening. "I don't want to lose you. I don't want this to tear us apart." I stopped in my tracks, my heart pounding. "Then prove it, Ethan. Prove that I'm more important to you than your mother. Prove that I'm worth fighting for." But Ethan didn't answer me. Instead, he dropped his gaze, as if the weight of my words had just sunk in. His silence was deafening, more painful than any argument could have been. I felt the tears threatening to rise, but I held them back. I wouldn't cry. Not now. Not when I was already so close to walking away. "I need to think," I said quietly, my voice barely a whisper. "I need some space." With that, I walked out of the room, leaving him standing there, unsure and paralyzed. My mind was racing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the man I had trusted more than anyone was slipping further and further away from me. I wasn't sure how much longer I could fight for this relationship. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to anymore. The next morning, I found myself staring at the phone in my hand. I had no idea what I was going to do. The conversation with Ethan had only deepened the rift between us, and now it felt like there was no way out. The emotional toll was too much, the frustration too overwhelming. I had fought for so long, but I wasn't sure if I could keep fighting alone. I needed to make a decision. But what if there was no decision that would fix this? The ringing of the doorbell sliced through the thick silence of the house. I looked up, feeling an unsettling chill settle over me. Ethan was still upstairs, lost in his thoughts, and I found myself alone once more in this house that felt more like a prison every day. Who could be coming over now? I walked hesitantly to the door, my mind still churning with everything that had happened. My argument with Ethan, his refusal to pick a side, the weight of Charlotte's manipulation. The door swung open, and there she was, Sophie. For a moment, I was speechless. Sophie. The friend I had once trusted so completely, the one who had disappeared without a word years ago. There she was, standing on my doorstep, with that same playful yet calculating smile I remembered all too well. "Ava," she said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. "It's been so long." I didn't know whether to be angry or relieved. My heart pounded in my chest as memories of our friendship flooded back. Sophie had been there for me once, a confidant through thick and thin, but her sudden disappearance all those years ago had left a wound that had never quite healed. "What are you doing here, Sophie?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though the anger and confusion simmered beneath the surface. She smiled again, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "I just thought we could catch up, you know. It's been so long. I heard about everything that's been happening with your family." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a chill creep down my spine. How much did she know? What was she really after? I could feel the walls I'd so carefully built around myself begin to crack. I had no time for games, no space left for manipulative people. "How do you even know about that?" I demanded, crossing my arms, my eyes narrowing. Sophie's eyes sparkled with something I couldn't quite read. Oh, you'd be surprised at what people know when they're paying attention. She shrugged casually, as though she hadn't just dropped a bombshell. You've got a lot going on, Ava. I thought I could help. Help? That word struck me like a slap in the face. Sophie didn't help people. She used them. She had done it before. What's your game, Sophie? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. You're not here just to catch up. What do you want? She chuckled, the sound cold and calculated. I just want to help. I know things about your family, things that could make things easier for you. Her eyes flicked toward the living room, where the tension still lingered from the previous night's arguments. I know Charlotte's been putting a lot of pressure on you, and I know your father-in-law is involved in things that aren't exactly on the up and up. I felt my stomach lurch. What was she implying? She couldn't possibly know everything. Could she? I don't know what you think you know, Sophie, but I'm not interested in your games. I was furious now, the anger mixing with a sense of betrayal. Sophie had never been anything but self-serving, and now she was using my family's turmoil for her own purposes. I was done with her, but Sophie wasn't done with me. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You don't have to do this alone, Ava. You don't have to bear all the weight of your family's mess. I could be your ally, you know. I've always known how to handle things like this. And I can tell you right now, this isn't just about the tuition money. This is about a lot more. I took a step back, the walls I'd built around myself coming down piece by piece. Sophie was dragging me into something I didn't want to be a part of. I could feel her pulling at the edges of my resolve, testing how far I would bend. Stop, I snapped. You don't get to manipulate me, Sophie. You don't get to come back into my life and expect me to trust you, not after everything. Sophie raised an eyebrow, unfazed by my outburst. You can keep pushing me away, Ava, but I'm telling you, you need me. Your family needs me. Don't make the mistake of thinking you can handle this on your own. The nerve of her. Sophie had always been good at playing the game, good at getting under people's skin. But I wasn't that naive girl anymore. I had learned the hard way that trusting people like Sophie only led to heartache. I turned away, walking toward the stairs, my heart racing. I don't need you, Sophie, I said without looking back, and I don't need anyone else trying to fix my life for me. Sophie's voice followed me, mocking, laced with venom. You'll regret this, Ava. You'll see. You'll need me before this is all over. I slammed the door behind her, the sound echoing in the empty house. My pulse was still pounding, but I couldn't let Sophie's words control me. Not anymore. I stood there for a long moment, trying to process everything she had just said. Sophie had always had a way of manipulating people, and now she was trying to do it to me. But what if there was some truth to her claims? What if Charlotte's financial troubles were only the tip of the iceberg? I didn't know who to trust anymore. My emotions were a tangled mess, and every time I thought I had a handle on the situation, another bombshell dropped. I needed to figure out my next move, but I couldn't do it alone. Yet trusting anyone now felt like a mistake. As I sat down, my mind spiraled into confusion. Sophie's reappearance had set something in motion. The family drama was only going to get worse, and I was stuck right in the middle of it all. The weight of the previous days still pressed heavily on me, but I had no idea that this evening would bring a new layer of chaos to my life. The lawsuit had already cast a shadow over my family, but tonight it would reveal even more than I was prepared to handle. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. I sat at the kitchen table trying to gather my thoughts when Ethan walked in. He didn't say anything at first. His face was tight, drawn, like he was carrying a burden too heavy for words. And as much as I wanted to ignore it, I knew that whatever came next would be another piece of the puzzle I was desperately trying to solve. Ava, he started, his voice heavy with the weight of things unsaid. There's more you need to know. I felt my stomach lurch. I had been bracing for this moment, but nothing could have prepared me for the words that came next. Charlotte, she's involved in a lawsuit, and it's worse than we thought. I froze. The room seemed to spin, the sound of my own heartbeat ringing in my ears. A lawsuit? What did this mean? How was Charlotte involved? And why hadn't I known about it? Explain, I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. Ethan hesitated, clearly struggling with how to frame the truth. It's about money. And there's a woman that I didn't even know about until recently. She's connected to our family in ways that, well, I didn't realize. I couldn't breathe. The pieces of my life, the carefully placed ones I had built around Ethan and myself, were suddenly crumbling. Charlotte had always been manipulative, but now there was a lawsuit involved? And a hidden woman? A part of me wanted to scream, but I stayed still. Who is she, Ethan? What does she have to do with us? Ethan's eyes flickered with a mix of guilt and frustration. Her name is Evelyn. She's someone from my mother's past. Someone my mother has been keeping a secret for years. I felt the room close in on me. How had I not known any of this? How had Ethan, my husband, the man I trusted, kept something so huge from me? I don't know all the details yet, he continued, but I do know that the lawsuit is tied to her. Charlotte's actions, they've caught up with her, Ava, and we're caught in the middle of it. Caught in the middle? That was an understatement. I was being suffocated by the lies, the deceit, and now this lawsuit. I felt my heart race as I struggled to grasp the full weight of what Ethan was telling me. My life, my marriage, everything I had believed in was now in question. I leaned back in my chair, feeling dizzy. Why didn't you tell me before? My voice was barely a whisper, but the hurt in it was unmistakable. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. I didn't want to burden you with it, Ava. I thought I could handle it on my own, but it's too much. This isn't just about the lawsuit. It's about everything. The things Charlotte has kept hidden from us. The secrets she's been hiding. And now, they're all coming out. I stood up, pacing the room, the anger simmering beneath the surface. I've been trying to hold everything together, Ethan. I've been trying to keep our lives from falling apart. And all this time, you've known about Evelyn? And Charlotte's lawsuit? How could you keep this from me? Ethan's face tightened, the guilt clear in his eyes. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to make it worse. But now we don't have a choice. This is bigger than anything we've faced before. I stopped pacing, turning to face him. I don't even know what to believe anymore. Charlotte's been manipulating me, using me, and now this? I don't know who to trust, Ethan. I feel like everything's been a lie. His eyes softened, but there was a hint of something else in them. Ava, I never meant to hurt you, but I don't know how to fix this either. It's a mess. I stared at him for a long moment, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make this pain go away. But instead, I felt the sting of betrayal like a cold knife. I didn't know how to fix this either. The next few days were a blur. The lawsuit, the secrets about Evelyn, it all felt like a whirlwind pulling me in every direction. And as the days passed, I realized that the emotional strain was starting to wear me down. I couldn't focus, couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe without feeling like the walls were closing in. I had to confront Charlotte. I had to get answers. And I had to do it now. The phone call came late one afternoon. Charlotte's voice, dripping with fake sweetness, greeted me on the other end. Ava, dear, I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to see if we could talk about everything that's been happening. I wanted to hang up right then, to tell her exactly what I thought of her and her manipulations, but instead I took a deep breath and forced myself to remain calm. I know about the lawsuit, Charlotte, I said, my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside me. And I know about Evelyn. You can't keep hiding things from me anymore. I want the truth. For a long moment there was silence on the other end of the line. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted. No longer the sweet, manipulative voice I knew, but something colder, more calculating. You don't know the whole story, Ava, she said, her voice low, and I don't think you're ready for it. The words sent a shiver down my spine. I'm ready, I said, my voice firm. I want to know everything. No more lies, Charlotte, no more games. I could feel the storm clouds gathering in my mind, each thought darker and heavier than the last. The tension in the house had reached a boiling point, and I knew that the next confrontation would be the one that tested my limits. Ethan had grown distant, and Clara, ever the puppet master, had decided that it was time to tighten her grip on my life even more. The first attack came out of nowhere. I was at home, alone, just trying to regain a sense of control after the chaos of the last few weeks. The phone rang, and I wasn't even surprised to see Clara's name on the screen. She had been quieter recently, but I knew it wouldn't last. "Ava," she purred, her voice as sweet as ever, but I could hear the underlying venom. "We need to talk. I've been thinking about everything that's been going on." I rolled my eyes, but kept my voice even. "What now, Clara?" "Oh, come on, don't be like that," she said, feigning concern. "I'm just trying to help. I think it's time we have a conversation about finances." My heart sank. Of course it was about money. It always was. "I don't know what you mean," I said, struggling to maintain my composure. "I'm just saying. Ethan and I have been talking. You're in a good place right now, financially, your promotion, your career. I'm sure you can help with a little something for the family. It's just a loan. You can afford it, can't you?" I felt the blood drain from my face. My body was stiff, every muscle locked in disbelief. "Clara," I snapped, "I'm not going to give you money, not for whatever scheme you have in mind this time." "Oh, come on," she persisted. "We're family, Ava. Family helps each other out. Don't you remember when you needed us? When Ethan was struggling? You owe us this." Her words hit me like a slap to the face. I gripped the phone tighter, trying to steady myself. The audacity of her was overwhelming, and the emotional weight of it pressed down on my chest. I had done nothing but try to get ahead, and now it felt like my own family was setting a trap for me. I knew that this wasn't about helping anyone. It was about control. "I don't owe you anything, Clara," I said, my voice colder than I wanted it to be. "And I'm not giving you a single penny." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her calculating her next move. "Fine," she finally said, her tone sharp. "But don't say I didn't warn you. Ethan's been too nice to you, Ava. He's so blinded by his loyalty to you that he's ignoring what's best for the family. You know, someone has to take charge around here." I felt the anger rise in me. "You've been trying to manipulate me for weeks, Clara. I see right through you." Her laughter was low and calculated. "You're not as clever as you think, Ava. But go ahead. Keep fighting. It's only going to make things worse." With that, she hung up, leaving me standing in the middle of the room, my heart racing and my mind whirling. How had it come to this? How had my life become a battle, every step forward met with a new obstacle? That night, the attack didn't stop with Clara. Ethan came home late, his face tense and tired. He didn't say anything as he walked into the kitchen, just set his things down and sat at the table. "Ava, I talked to Clara tonight," he said after a long pause, his voice strained. "She's really upset." I didn't look at him. "I'm sure she is," I said, bitterness creeping into my voice. "She's been manipulating me for weeks, Ethan, but it's fine. I'm used to it." Ethan sighed, his hands rubbing his temples as if he were fighting some invisible battle in his mind. "Ava, she's family. She's asking for a loan. Just help her out. I don't see why this has to be such a big deal." I froze, every part of me going numb. "You want me to help her?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "After everything she's done? You want me to just give her more money and let her keep running things?" Ethan met my gaze then, his eyes filled with something I couldn't read. "She's my family, Ava. We have to help. I don't want this to tear us apart." Tear us apart. The words echoed in my mind, a grim reminder of how close we were to losing everything. I stood up from the table, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "I'm done, Ethan. I'm done with this game. If you can't see how toxic your mother is, then I don't know how much more I can give. You have to choose. You can't keep playing both sides." Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he lowered his head, as if the weight of everything was too much for him. And that silence? It was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. The days that followed were a blur of tension, accusations, and strained silence. Clara's influence over Ethan grew stronger with every passing day. And with it, the distance between us stretched further. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Clara played her trump card. I overheard a conversation she was having with Ethan in the living room one afternoon. Her voice was low, but the words hit me hard. Ethan, I know you want to protect Ava, but the truth is, we can't keep pretending things are normal. We need to take control of this situation, and you need to stop letting her manipulate you. I couldn't help it. I had to hear the rest. But as I stood there listening, the sting of her words settled deep within me. Clara wasn't just manipulating Ethan anymore. She was using him to turn him against me. The wedge between us was growing wider, and I could feel myself losing him piece by piece. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but inside, a storm was raging. The tension finally reached its peak one evening when I walked into the living room and found Ethan sitting on the couch with Clara. They were talking in hushed tones, their faces too close, their body language too familiar. I stood there for a moment, trying to control the rising tide of emotion within me. When Ethan looked up, he saw the fury in my eyes. "Ava," he started, but I wasn't listening. I couldn't. I turned and walked out of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know how much longer I could keep fighting for a marriage that seemed to be slipping through my fingers. But I was done being passive. As I stood on the balcony that night, staring out at the city lights, I realized something. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep letting Clara and Ethan tear me apart. The time had come. I had to take control of my life, of my future. The choices I made now would shape everything to come. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of determination. I wasn't going down without a fight. The silence in the house was unbearable, pressing in on me from all sides. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant sound seemed magnified by the weight of the tension that had settled over everything. It felt as though the walls were closing in. The air was thick with it, betrayal, confusion, and an anger I wasn't sure how to express. I had always known that George was the more reasonable one, the calm, steady figure in the family. But the truth was beginning to unfold, and the man I had once thought I could rely on seemed to be slipping away, turning into someone I didn't even recognize. It all started when I overheard George speaking with Charlotte. The voices were hushed, but I could still hear the intensity. I stood frozen at the top of the stairs, my hand gripping the railing as I tried to make sense of the conversation below. "I know this isn't easy, George." Charlotte's voice was low, deceptively soothing. "But we've been through too much together for you to turn your back on me now." "I don't know what to think anymore, Charlotte," George replied, his voice strained. This is all too much. I never imagined it would come to this." "You can't let her tear us apart," Charlotte pressed. "She's already pulling Ethan in, and now she's trying to turn the family against us. I'm not letting her take everything we've worked for." His response was a beat too long. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "Let's just handle this ourselves. We've been together for years, Charlotte. I can't just abandon you." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout at the top of my lungs that I was standing right there, listening to everything. That my father-in-law, the one person I thought would stand by me, had just made a decision that was about to change everything. I had always assumed that if there was one person in that house who could see through Charlotte's manipulation, it would be George. He was the one who had been married to her all these years after all. But now, in the wake of everything, he was choosing to stand by her, even after all the damage she'd done. When I finally descended the stairs, the words came to me in a rush. "Is this what you're going to do, George?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "After everything she's put me through, you're going to choose her over me?" George looked up, his face conflicted, a storm of emotions flickering in his eyes. But it was too late for explanations. I had already heard the choice he'd made. "Ava, I don't know what to say. This isn't easy for me either," he stammered. "Easy?" I laughed, but it came out more bitter than I intended. "This isn't about what's easy, George. This is about what's right. And right now, you're siding with the person who's been trying to destroy me." "I'm not siding with anyone," George said, standing up from his chair, his voice growing firmer. "I'm just trying to figure out how to keep this family from falling apart." "You're already letting it fall apart, George," I shot back, my voice rising. By choosing her, you've already chosen where you stand. You've turned your back on me. He flinched at the words, but there was something in his face that was hard to read. A mixture of guilt, confusion, and something darker. A realization that the choice he was making would have consequences. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. The conversation ended with silence. George didn't argue further. I didn't want to hear anymore. He had made his choice. Over the next few days, I could feel the division between us growing. Every conversation felt strained, every glance loaded with unspoken words. George's attempt at an apology felt hollow, and Ethan was nowhere to be found when I needed him most. It was as if the world had split in two. On one side, there was Charlotte and George, clinging to their toxic alliance, and on the other, there was me, standing alone, trying to make sense of the mess that had been my life. I walked through the house like a ghost, feeling disconnected from everything around me. Ethan, who had always been my partner, seemed to be shrinking away, pulled in two different directions. When I finally confronted him, my voice was tight, barely controlled. "Ethan, don't you see what's happening? Your father has made his choice. He's chosen her over me, over us. And now I'm supposed to just let this go?" "I don't know what to say to you, Ava," Ethan replied, his voice soft, filled with frustration. "This isn't easy for anyone. I'm caught in the middle and I don't know how to fix this." "Then fix it!" I shouted, the words bursting out of me before I could stop them. "You're my husband, Ethan. You're supposed to stand by me, but you keep letting her pull the strings, and I'm supposed to just accept it?" He fell silent, not meeting my eyes, and in that moment, I knew. He wasn't going to fight for me, not in the way I needed him to. The day that followed felt like a blur. I went through the motions, but inside, I was breaking. The realization that I had lost both George and Ethan, the two people I had once trusted, left me feeling empty, alone in a way I had never known before. I was standing at the precipice, staring down at a future I hadn't chosen. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. My family, the people I had once tried to protect, were falling apart, and I was left holding the pieces. That night, as I stood in front of the mirror, I saw a woman I barely recognized. Her eyes were tired, filled with a mixture of anger and hurt. But there was something else there now, something new, a quiet determination. I didn't know how much more I could take, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't let this continue. I had fought so hard for my family, for my marriage, but now I saw it clearly. I couldn't fight alone anymore. I had to make a choice, and that choice, as terrifying as it was no longer about saving my family. It was about saving myself. I stood at the door, staring at the family home, the place that had once been my sanctuary. A final glance at the life I thought I'd built. With a deep breath, I closed the door behind me and walked away. The weight of the decision pressed down on me with every breath. For so long, I had been passive, allowing the manipulations of my mother-in-law and the silence from my husband to shape my life. But now, as I stood in front of the mirror, the reflection staring back at me felt different. It wasn't the defeated woman who had let herself be trapped by the chaos. It was someone stronger, someone ready to fight back. I had made my decision. The thought of suing my mother-in-law, Charlotte, felt surreal, yet empowering. I could feel the tension in my chest as the plan took shape. I had been pushed to the edge. I wasn't going to stand by anymore. I was going to take control of my life, take control of my future, and let the chips fall where they may. I had been humiliated, manipulated, betrayed, and now, for the first time, I was going to fight back. Not for anyone else, but for me. It was late when I called the lawyer's office, my fingers shaking as I dialed the number. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, but I could hear the faint hint of concern when I explained my situation. They were familiar with cases like mine: familial manipulation, financial abuse, and emotional distress. It felt strange to hear the words out loud, as though they belonged to someone else, but they were mine. "I want to sue Charlotte," I said, my voice steady, though my insides trembled. "For emotional abuse and manipulation, and if it helps my case, There's something else. Financial fraud. The words were heavy as they left my mouth. I had suspected for months, but now I had proof. The college tuition fund, the secretive withdrawals, the shell companies that had mysteriously popped up in her name. All of it pointed to one thing. Charlotte had been siphoning money, playing the long game with her deceit. But now, I had everything I needed. The weeks that followed were a blur. I threw myself into the legal process, organizing the evidence, reliving the pain and the betrayal. Each piece of documentation was another crack in the foundation of my family. Ethan, as expected, was no help. In fact, he seemed to distance himself even further, and I couldn't blame him. The pressure from his mother was suffocating, and he had always been more loyal to her than to me. I tried to talk to him once about everything, but he was silent, his eyes filled with guilt and confusion. "Ava, I don't know what to say," he said. "This isn't something I can just fix." I had to remind myself that I wasn't fighting for him anymore. I wasn't fighting for George or anyone else in that toxic family. I was fighting for me, for the woman I had become, and the woman I wanted to be. The legal paperwork was filed. The lawsuit was in motion. The first few days after, I couldn't sleep. The thought of facing Charlotte in court, of exposing her manipulation for everyone to see, was both terrifying and liberating. But there was no turning back now. It was at my lowest, in the quiet moments when I was alone, that the weight of my decision hit me the hardest. I had been passive for so long, but now there was no one else to turn to. My relationship with Ethan was hanging by a thread, and George, my once strong ally, had sided with Charlotte. I had no one left but myself. I realized, for the first time in my life, I had to be my own advocate. I had to protect myself. No one else was going to do it for me. As the weeks passed, the battle began to escalate. The legal threats, the constant pressure from Charlotte, and the emotional toll all began to take their toll. My relationship with Ethan grew colder by the day. The silence between us spoke volumes. He couldn't choose. He wouldn't choose. And the distance between us grew. One afternoon, after a particularly heated phone call with my lawyer, I was sitting in the living room when I stumbled across something that would change everything. A financial document, a bank statement I had overlooked in the chaos of everything that had been going on. The numbers were clear. Charlotte had been draining money from the family business accounts. The college tuition fund was just a front. It was all a lie. She had been using the family's finances to fund her own private endeavors. I sat there, staring at the numbers. The room seemed to spin around me. The proof was right there. Charlotte had crossed the line. The discovery of the financial manipulation ignited something inside me. I was no longer just fighting for my dignity. I was fighting to protect my future. And now I had the ammunition to do it. I felt an overwhelming surge of anger as I realized how deep the betrayal ran. Charlotte wasn't just manipulating me emotionally, she had been stealing from everyone. Her actions weren't just morally reprehensible, they were illegal. I gathered the documents, my fingers tight around them as I made another call to my lawyer. "This changes everything," I said, voice trembling with fury. "We're going after everything. I want everything she's taken." But as the battle intensified, so did the pressure. Ethan became more distant, more withdrawn. I knew he was struggling with his loyalties, torn between the woman he had loved his entire life and the woman he had married. But his indecision felt like betrayal. When I confronted him, the frustration was too much to contain. "You've done nothing but sit back and watch," I said, my voice low but sharp. "This is my fight now. You can't just keep waiting for it to blow over." "I don't know what to say," Ethan responded quietly, avoiding my gaze. "I never wanted this to happen." I didn't need him to say anything anymore. The truth was clear. And then came the bombshell. A few days later, I received a legal notice. It was a countersuit. Charlotte was suing me for defamation and emotional distress. The weight of it hit me hard, and for a moment I just stared at the papers in disbelief. How could she do this? How could she keep lying, even when the truth was staring her in the face? But I wasn't backing down. I couldn't. As I sat there staring at the papers, I felt the weight of everything settle on my shoulders. The battle had just begun, and I was ready for it. The weight of the last few months finally felt like it was starting to lift. I had fought, I had bled emotionally, and I had walked away with my head held high. But even now, as I sat in the quiet of my apartment, the echo of the battle I'd won still lingered. It wasn't the victory I had imagined. There was no grand celebration, no sense of vindication. Instead, there was a deep sense of loss. I had won my case against Charlotte. The courts had ruled in my favor, and the manipulation, the emotional abuse, the lies, it all came to light. Charlotte had been forced to pay for her actions, but the cost of the battle was far more than I had ever expected. The emotional toll of the lawsuit hadn't been just the courtrooms or the legal battles. It was the unraveling of my entire family. Ethan and I, what remained of us, had taken hits that could never be repaired. When the verdict came down, a part of me had expected something to change, something to shift. But instead it was like I had opened a wound that could never heal. I could feel the hollow space between us, stretching further with every passing day. Ethan, though not directly involved in the case, had sided with his mother from the beginning. And now, after the verdict, it was clear that the damage to our relationship was irreparable. Even now, sitting here in my apartment, the finality of it all felt almost unreal. I had fought for my autonomy. I had stood up for myself in ways I never thought I would. But the emotional scars were raw, and the emptiness of my family's absence was overwhelming. I had hoped that the victory would somehow justify the pain, but it didn't. Instead, it only brought clarity. The loss of my family was something I couldn't undo, no matter how hard I tried. The trust that had once existed between me and my in-laws, particularly Ethan, was gone. I wasn't just grieving the absence of those relationships, I was grieving the fact that I would never get them back. The lawsuit had been necessary, but I wondered if the cost of my victory was too great. Was it worth it? Was fighting back the right choice when everything around me was crumbling? The house felt empty now. The familiar smells, the warmth of what used to be a home, all of it felt distant. Even the furniture, the pictures on the walls, seemed like remnants of a life I no longer recognized. This wasn't the life I had worked so hard to build. As I walked through the city one afternoon, trying to clear my mind, I received a phone call. It was from my lawyer. I braced myself for more bad news, but instead, I was hit with a revelation. The financial manipulation Charlotte had been carrying out was far worse than I had realized. The extent of it was staggering. The money wasn't just about tuition funds, it was about embezzlement from the family's business accounts. The fraud had gone on for years, and I had been completely unaware of it. Anger surged through me. How could she do this to all of us? How could she steal from the very people who trusted her? But more than anger, there was a deep sense of betrayal. I had trusted Ethan too, and now I was learning that he had known about some of it, but he had kept quiet, unwilling to confront his mother. For a moment, I was ready to take action. I could fight back, get my money back, expose everything, but something inside me stopped. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to keep my family together, only to watch it all fall apart. I realized that some battles were better left behind. The fight for justice, for complete retribution, it wasn't worth the toll it would take on my already fractured soul. Instead, I made the decision to move on, to leave it behind. The financial betrayal, the emotional scars, all of it would stay with me. But I didn't need to keep fighting a war that was already over. I would not let these people, their actions, and their lies control me anymore. I had fought for my freedom, and now it was time to live it. But the decision to let go didn't come easily. There were days when the hurt, the betrayal, would hit me like a wave. The anger would swell up, and I would find myself questioning everything. Could I have done something differently? Could I have saved the relationships that meant so much to me? I realized that the healing process would be long. But as time passed, I began to understand that healing wasn't about undoing the past. It was about learning to live with it. Then came the final confrontation with Ethan. We had avoided it for so long, but I knew that I had to face him one last time. He was still trying to reach out, trying to explain himself, but I knew in my heart that it was over. Our relationship had been broken for a long time. I wasn't sure if it was ever truly whole. "You don't understand," he said one last time, his voice cracking. "I never wanted to hurt you, but it was too late." "You didn't. You just didn't care enough to stop it," I replied quietly. The words felt like they had been building for months, years. The hurt had settled deep inside me, and I had carried it too long to let it go now. I could see the look in his eyes, the pleading, the guilt, but I knew I had to walk away. I couldn't fix what was broken anymore. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for something that had never been whole. "I loved you," I whispered, finally feeling the weight of those words. "But I can't do this anymore." With one last glance at the man I had loved, I walked away. I left the life we had built together behind, taking the first steps toward something new. The air felt heavier, and yet, for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of freedom. As I walked down the street, the future seemed uncertain, but there was something else. Hope. A new beginning. For the first time, I was standing on my own 2 feet. I wasn't defined by the past. I wasn't defined by the people who had tried to control me. I was Ava. I was free, and I was ready to rebuild. I was ready to... As I look back on everything I've been through, I realize something crucial. True strength comes from within. It's not about being perfect or having everything under control. It's about standing up for yourself, even when the odds are against you. Life will throw curveballs, and people will try to bring you down, but at the end of the day, the only person who can truly change your future is you. I've learned that setting boundaries isn't just important, it's necessary. We have to protect our peace, even if it means letting go of the people we once loved. It's a hard truth, but it's a truth that will lead us to the life we deserve. So, to anyone watching this, if you're facing challenges, don't let fear hold you back. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Stand tall, speak up, and take control of your destiny. You might lose some battles along the way, but you'll gain the most important thing, your own freedom. What about you? Have you ever felt trapped by someone or something in your life? How did you find the strength to break free? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story inspiring, or it touched your heart, leave a comment or let me know where you're watching from. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button for more stories that might just change the way you see the world. Your journey, like mine, is just beginning.